And here comes Gilly. Very good. So welcome everybody to another conversation from Hart Community Group, hosted by Hart Community Group, which we do regularly. We do about 3 of these a month. And really delighted this time to welcome Steph Killingbeck, who had the most fabulous adventure and is going to tell us all about that. So the first chunk of this call will be Steph giving us a little presentation about her adventure, and then we'll get a chance to ask her some questions. So hello Diane, hello Gilly. If you could keep yourself muted unless you are speaking, that would be great. Yeah, so Steph, tell us what you did and why you did it, and then we'll sort of probe in more detail after that.
Okay, well, shall I just start sharing my screen and begin? Okay. Okay. Yes, well, thank you for inviting me to come in and speak with you this morning. It's lovely to have the opportunity to share the story of my adventure, of my environmental odyssey. I, of course, am Steph, and the Odyssey was a roughly 1,500-mile walk from Land's End to John O'Groats that I undertook between April and July last year. And the purpose of the walk was not only to undertake a physical challenge, but also to visit environmental projects along the way and to share that journey as I went. And the hope with that was, and still is, to raise awareness of the climate crisis and to inspire people to act. For myself, I found that I was becoming increasingly active in an environmental sphere over the previous sort of 6 or so years, but I still felt as though I was searching for my place within it. Where was the place that I really fit, where I felt that I could make the most impact and feel the most purposeful doing so. And at the same time, I've been thinking about taking on a bigger physical challenge. I've been fortunate to walk a number of the long distance paths in the UK, and so I've been mulling over this idea of Land's End to John O'Groats. But up until this point, I'd thought of them as 2 quite separate projects. And it was in fact my husband who suggested, well, maybe these 2 things could come together. That in fact, the walk was an opportunity to showcase the incredible natural world that I am encouraging people to save, and the project's a demonstration of how, of the positive impacts that people are embarking on right now. And so that's how the idea started. And then, of course, it was just a case of carrying out the research, which projects, and planning the route. And in total, I ended up visiting 14 projects. My first stop of the trip was the Eden Project, which I visited really as a demonstration of the sheer variety and beauty that nature has to offer, a reminder of this fantastic natural world that we are trying to save. On into Devon, I visited Treesock, a community-owned energy company who are producing lower-cost, fossil-free energy for the local community and owned by local community shareholders. From the South West Coast Path, I passed through the New Forest and onto the South Downs Way, where I stopped in at the Sustainability Centre, a beautiful centre on an old MOD site with a focus on education. Coming off the South Downs Way, I swung via Knepp Estate to visit their rewilding project, a project demonstrating ways of farming which place nature first. From there, I followed my own route up to London, where I stopped for a tour of Bedsed, an incredible housing project built 20 years ago with sustainability and community at its heart. Coming out of London, I headed for Hertfordshire and home. I was keen to include a couple of projects from my hometown and where my own environmental journey began. And they were Ron's Plot, a community allotment, and Hitchin Food Rescue Hub, rescuing, as you know, perfectly edible food from landfill. From here, my next stop was Nottingham and Green Meadows, a lottery-funded project helping the community find ways to collectively tackle the climate crisis. Next was Incredible Edible in Todmorden, certainly not the only incredible edible out there, but the one which kick-started the movement of edible planting in community spaces for the use of any and everybody. And whilst I was in Todmorden, I took the opportunity to catch the train into Bradford for the day to meet the group behind Fossil Free West Yorkshire Pension Fund, a group who are campaigning to have their pensions divested from fossil fuel investments. After this project, I took a couple of weeks away from project visits in order to walk the Pennine Way with my mum, who saw me up to the border with Scotland, after which my next project was Transition Stirling, a long-standing transition town with all sorts of activities from food rescue to a tool library, events and workshops, and most recently they've opened a reuse centre. From Stirling, I headed up to and through the Cairngorms and out to the coast to visit the Findhorn Foundation, an intentional community demonstrating the power of coalescing around a centrally held belief. Following the coast around, I headed across the water and onto the Black Isle to the Black Isle Brewery Gardens, a stop which I factored in as it's the place I'd been volunteering before I set off on my walk. And the final project I visited was Trees for Life, a charity who are working with volunteers and the local community in order to rewild Scotland's Caledonian forest, of which there is tragically only 1% left. And then from here, it was the final 2-week push up to John Groats and the end of my walk. And all of these projects, of course, were inspiring and thought-provoking, but there were a few themes that came up for me time and again. And today I thought I'd share 3 of those with you. They are our human beings' relationship with nature, education, and community. So after a lot of planning, I finally set off on the 16th of April 2022. And to say I didn't get off to the best start is perhaps a little bit of an understatement. I had identified somewhere I was going to wild camp before setting off properly the following morning. However, I had failed to realise that it was the Easter holidays. So arriving at Land's End, I was somewhat flustered by the sheer number of people there. And so when I found the spot I'd identified, it was out of the way and fairly flat. I thought, right, I'll get my tent up, it's fine. I was slightly concerned about how windy it was. And I definitely should have heeded those reservations. By the middle of the night, my tent was flexing so badly, it was touching my knees lying down. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to break my tent before this adventure has even begun. Fortunately, that didn't happen. I did, however, break down camp in the middle of the night and do a little night hiking under the light of the full moon, which was very beautiful, but not necessarily how I had intended to begin. The next few days, well, few weeks, continued to be reasonably tough. I had decided to follow the Mary Michael Pilgrim's Way up to the Eden Project, after which I cut out onto the coast path. The coast path was absolutely beautiful, stunningly beautiful, but inland Cornwall was quite a different experience. The wayfinding was fairly challenging, and I think a farmer that I chatted to summed it up best when he said to me, oh, what's on the map and what's on the ground are 2 totally different things. And so it proved to be. I also made the very rookie mistake of letting my feet get wet and not drying them out. I think because I'd already hit a number of stumbling blocks, I'd sort of felt, no, I must make some decent progress. And so I overrode common sense, the results of which were blisters, which then ripped open on the soles of my feet, after which I spent a few weeks paying for that mistake, and I did not make it again. I was mostly wild camping with some campsites and hostels thrown in, apart from around the projects where I had already arranged accommodation in order to recharge my tech and to pick up my resupply boxes. And so, as you can imagine, getting to that first piece of accommodation was a real treat. And that, of course, meant my first project, which was the Eden Project, which was not only just a wonderful visual display of, as I say, the sheer variety and wonder of nature, but also a fantastic demonstration of what can happen when people and nature work together. The Eden Project, of course, is on the site of a former China clay pit, fairly barren and lifeless when they took it over. And interestingly, I found myself looking at this picture and wondering, I wonder if this is what people imagine that their own life will look like if they take on board the changes that environmental activists are encouraging them to do, that they imagine that it's either people or planet, and that if they do these things, their own life will be somewhat barren and lifeless. But what I wanted to demonstrate was that, in fact, quite the opposite is true. That by creating more blue and green spaces where nature can thrive, we know that it is brilliant for our mental health. It's been proven that we are less anxious, more able to deal with challenging emotions, and more empathetic after spending time in nature. And with more people than ever before living in cities, our connection with nature is becoming more and more remote, and that is not only bad for the planet, but also for us. And I think we forget, to our detriment, that we are part of this planet, not apart from it. And I spotted this quote as I wandered around, which I think really sums this up beautifully. And it said, "Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself." And I think that we are taking dangerous risks with that finely woven web. And in fact, it's inaction that is more likely to end us in that barren land. Whilst the Eden Project used exotic plants from around the world to demonstrate the wonder of nature, I wanted to share the incredible local landscapes that we have here on our doorstep. And of course, not every part I walked through was amazing, but there were three bits that were particular highlights that I would like to share with you. The first was, as I mentioned, the Southwest Coast Path. An absolutely amazing start to my walk. And the pictures really don't do it justice. But what I hope that they convey is how lucky we are to have some of this incredible scenery right here on our doorstep, and to inspire people to want to go out and have experiences like this for themselves, and to look at this and feel that this is worth saving. After a week in the sort of central agricultural belt, going into Derbyshire was an absolute that I know well. It's somewhere that I would love to go back and explore more. But a walk I did get to do was the Pennine Way, and it was absolutely amazing. The tough climbs of the Southwest Coast Path were back, but along with those climbs came the amazing views. And it was incredible. It's a national trail I would highly recommend if you are considering getting out on one. And the last place to share with you is the Cairngorms. Much of my walking in Scotland was lowland walking. It's simply too huge to be able to stop and climb everything. But I knew that I wanted to make an exception for the Cairngorms. I knew I wanted to climb and to get some of those incredible views. And it is breathtakingly beautiful. Again, somewhere to go back to and to explore some more, I feel. As well as inspiring people to spend time in nature, I'm a huge believer in the importance of education. And I think whilst first we must engage with this crisis, as you all know, regardless of, despite the heartbreak that brings, to understand and to accept the consequences of our actions. But I didn't want to encourage people to open up to these feelings and then be left feeling hopeless, unsure of what to do. And I felt that through this walk, I could present some of the solutions that people are enacting right now, projects that are doing things that are making a difference, that people can choose to get involved with right now. As well as practical solutions, many of the projects I visit work hard to make sure that the people who volunteer or visit them leave with a greater understanding of the climate crisis than when they arrived. Like me, believing that the more informed we are, the more knowledgeable and empowered we become. And for some projects, like the Sustainability Centre on the South Downs, education is their main focus, as well as the many, many school groups that pass through the centre every year. They also offer day and residential courses for adults, an opportunity to delve into topics which spark your interest, whether that be reconnecting with nature, learning a new craft, a practical outdoor skill, of course, all with that focus on sustainability. And then there are organisations like Bioregional, who, along with the Peabody Trust, created the BedZ housing complex, and they concentrate on more a subject-specific area. The aim in this case, to create a zero-carbon eco-village. And from the experience of creating this village, they then created the One Planet Living framework, which they now use with organisations and community groups all around the world. And it's available for anybody to use for free. And their aim with this is to make sustainable living a reality. And by that, of course, they mean living within planetary boundaries. Now, of course, I imagine you probably know this. When I have given this talk before, I have provided a little context. So I'm assuming when I say that if everybody in the world consumed as much as the average person in Western Europe, we would need 3 planets to sustain us. That will not come as a surprise to this group. They also offer tours of the site, and I had the opportunity to go round and to see and hear the approaches that they took, viable solutions that we can and should be implementing in our buildings up and down the country. Of course, as well as visiting the projects, I had long periods of time where I was alone to reflect not only on communal approaches for engaging with nature and tackling the climate crisis, but how we as individuals interact with the natural world as well. And I think education is important in this context too, teaching us about how we should behave in nature. Now, access to nature, whilst also safeguarding nature, is of course somewhat of a thorny topic, but I do believe that it's important for people to spend time outdoors, because if they haven't had joyful, exciting, fun times outside, why are they going to care about saving it? And I also feel that it shouldn't be something that is only for those who have land or those who have money. It's a conversation I had with many people along the way, and we never truly got to a good answer of how to tackle this. But I do think that surely education must feature here, not only within a school context, but in reaching adults as well. And I also found myself thinking about the right to roam. Of course, we need to behave well in nature, but we also need to be trusted to look after it. And I found the more I walked, the more irritated I became by the endless keep out signs. And I found myself thinking, why? Why should I keep out? And if there is a truly good reason, if I am going to disturb ground nesting birds, it's a site of special scientific interest, fine, let me know. I and most people will be happy to respect that. In Scotland, of course, the right to roam has been enshrined in law since 2003, and it isn't a free-for-all. It is contingent on an adherence to a strict set of responsibilities. You have to respect other people's privacy. You don't just wander through people's gardens. Whereas in England, we have access to only 8% of the land and 3% of the waterways. And I think we can probably agree that that is not quite the same as wandering through somebody's back garden. The final theme that I wanted to talk about was community. And this is somewhere I really think the power lies. Now, of course, accepting that, yes, we do need huge system change. And of course, we must keep pushing for that. But we can't sit and wait whilst others catch up. And something that I thought was wonderful about the small projects was that they were more agile, able to act more quickly. And what we need to see is lots of those projects popping up and down the country, sharing their learnings with one another, helping one another to set up similar projects and multiplying the impact. And the great thing about these local projects was, of course, that they're also benefiting their local community. They're helping to shorten supply chains, offering opportunities for people to meet their neighbours. And done well, they're tackling more than the climate crisis. They're helping to reduce the cost of living. They're offering opportunities for tackling issues around mental health, opportunities to reconnect with nature, so many wonderful, positive things. And so the projects I'd like to end with are ones that are doing these positive things. And often they were projects set up by passionate individuals and embraced by the community. Projects that are highly replicable, demonstrating tangible solutions that our leaders should be adopting, supporting, and funding. I think relocalizing systems is incredibly important. And I recognize that in a global economy, that is not an easy thing. But what I loved about Totnes Renewable Energy Society was that they were taking a huge issue, energy generation, typically carried out by the hugely polluting fossil fuel industry, and showing how a community could step back from that. Do they supply all of their own energy needs? Of course not. Are they drawing less from the grid? Absolutely. And they're owned by the local community. 99% of the shareholders live within 10 miles of Totnes and all have a say in how it's being run. And not only that, as I said, opportunities are being created to meet new people and to build connections. And I think in the challenging times that we face ahead, strong communities, those who know one another and who care about what happened to each other, will fare the best. I also loved meeting people who saw a need that they didn't necessarily know how to answer, but set out to find out anyway, like in the case of Green Meadows. And this resulted in them receiving 5 years of funding from the Climate Action Fund, which has allowed them to bring people in to provide that education and that skills training that they were looking for. And they're now running some fantastic projects. They're running one called Future Fit Home Service, which is a free service tailoring individual plans for homeowners to help them cut their energy bills, to lower their carbon emissions, and to improve the comfort and warmth of their homes. They've created a knowledge bank which lives in the local library. The idea is that the learnings from the project will last long past when the funding has ceased. They have a Climate Champions initiative, which offers funding and training for individuals to implement their ideas within the community, and an ideas fund which supports grassroots community groups to tackle climate change. And they have a beautiful community mural, I think a wonderful visual demonstration of everything they are trying to achieve. And what I loved about these projects is that they're not waiting for somebody else to provide the solutions. They have seen a need and they're stepping up themselves to provide the answers. In the context of the walk, I also found a sense of community, quite a different one. Many of the people that I met, I will never see again, but the lessons that I learned there have remained with me. And something that I found really moving was the kindness that I encountered on the trail. People who I have never met, to whom I was a complete stranger, who offered me kindness just because they could. And I thought it was a reminder that I needed. Being involved in climate activism, I think it's quite easy to get into a them and us mindset. You can see what's happening. You think, why is everybody not acting with this, with a sense of urgency? But actually it reminded me that whilst people might be driven by different motivations, people are essentially kind. And something else which was an unexpected reward was conversations that I had with people who I would never have met had I not undertaken this walk. Much as we were saying before, when you put stuff on social media, it's so easy to keep reaching people within your bubble. In this context, there's no way I'd have met them had I not been out in the trail. And they were people for whom this wasn't necessarily a topic they were thinking about, but they respected that I'd undertaken this challenge and the reasons why. And I just have to hope that the ripple effect of some of those conversations will reach further than I can ever know. It also reminded me that whilst I enjoy my own company and I'm happy by myself, but I do value the company of others. In fact, it was more than that. It was connection with people, whether that be taking in an incredible view or having a challenging conversation, a conversation that widens our horizons, opens us up to new ideas, makes us more tolerant and helps us to think beyond ourselves. And all of those things, I think, are important for tackling the climate crisis. That's not to say, of course, that embarking on this walk magically solved all of my climate anxiety or provided all of the solutions we need. But what it did remind me was that I'm not on my own, that there are many people acting in communities up and down the country, and they are making tangibly positive impacts right now. And my hope in then coming back and sharing this story was to engage people with the climate crisis, to recognize that there isn't time to wait. It's us. We are the people to act. And that in sharing the projects, I could demonstrate how, the ways that we can get involved that are empowering and impactful. And so I hope that, you see, I've said this to other people, you of course do not need encouragement to get out there and set up your own. You have done this, so that's fantastic. So whilst I do typically encourage people to go and to get involved, you do not need that encouragement. But I guess my encouragement for those who are involved would be to also give yourself an opportunity to go outside, to go into nature, and to remind yourself sometimes what it is you're fighting for, and to allow yourself to be replenished in that incredible environment. And so, yes, I normally finish by encouraging people to be inspired to go outside and embark on their very own adventure. And that brings me to the end. Thank you very much.
Okay, fantastic. Steph, yes, you've stopped sharing. Brilliant. Oh, Steph, it was a round of applause for Steph. Just amazing.
Thank you.
Such an inspiring, I mean, just the project itself, you know, not only the actual physical reality of the walk, but the way you sort of learned so much, and the way you connected so much with different projects and different people, and with nature. Just extraordinary. It actually got me. I was feeling quite emotional. You surprised me. So thank you for that. It was also brilliantly presented. So
Thank you.
very, very good. And I loved your 3 themes that you brought out of it. You know, the relationship with nature, education, and community. So I'm thrilled with that, and your enthusiasm and passion are contagious. Thank you. So I'm going to open it up now. If you have a question, we're quite a small group. If you have a question, please just unmute yourself and go for it. Diane.
Well done, Steph. I've been looking forward to hearing about your adventure for such a long time. Fabulous. I'm afraid I've got to go now, because I'm going to go for a lovely walk along Pegston Hills with a friend. I just wanted to show you this. Can you see it? No, you can't. It's back to front. It's what.
Oh, yes, it's the quote.
Yeah,
it's the quote. It says on the back, I've written on it, Chief Seattle. That's where it came from.
Oh, okay.
I've got the other half. I wrote this years ago, but I've got the other half on another stone somewhere. This is only the first half of that quote, but it came from Chief Seattle.
Oh, thank you. I shall look that up.
North American chieftain. Anyway, yeah, it's a very good quote. I agree. I had to go find this stone. Anyway, thank you ever so much, but I've got to go now. But
all right, thank you so much for coming, Diane.
I'll check out the rest of it on the recording. Yeah. Okay. Bye then.
All right. Bye, Diane. Gilly.
Hi. Oh, Steph. So lovely to see you, and
you.
Huge respect for what you've done. And I just love the way you've presented it. And I'm thinking, wow, this has huge potential for sort of spreading the word in such a lovely, positive, upbeat way. So I was wondering how you're spreading the word of this great upbeat adventure of yours. And then I have a second question as well. So how are you spreading the word?
That is what I'm working on at the moment. That is, yes, I'm trying to sort of work through that. I had a few ideas. The talk, of course, is one way. I gave it a few weeks ago at the Sheffield Adventure Film Festival. They are trying to weave in more environmental messaging into what they're doing. And I gave it for another, so that was in person, and then I did another Zoom one. So I am hoping to look, I asked Annie actually maybe if I could give it at the Eco Day. So I am trying to find opportunities where I could pop up and keep sharing the talk as it is. Something that I want to do, I've just found it difficult because it's not something I have much experience of, is I did film along the way and at each of the projects. And I'd like to create a little film series of sort of 10 minutes where I can go into more detail around each of the individual projects. The hope with that is I could then team up with people who have knowledge, whether that is creating a local renewable energy group, whether that is food rescue or a community, whatever that might be, to then run workshops. The 10-minute video would sort of be an intro, and having nature as the backdrop, a bit of a reminder of this is why we are taking these actions, and just sort of kickstart the conversation, whether then that's a talk from them or a workshop where we can break out into groups and look at how would this work in my community. That sort of longer term what I've been thinking, but creating the film footage is yes, a little harder than and I think what I need to do is to try to go back to some of these projects to capture some more footage. I mean, you'll have noticed sort of Totnes and Green Meadows, there wasn't much there. I've had to take it off their social media feeds because when I was chatting to Green Meadows, they were in their first year. So a lot of that had been achieving funding and getting things in place. They're now, I think, running projects. So I'd love to go back and capture some footage of it actually happening. But all of these things are sort of things I'd like to do. I've just got to figure out how. And I'm also working with somebody on a mentoring program at the moment to look and see what. So I'm just doing some part-time bio work to sort of fund an exploration into, can I do something more in an environmental sphere to allow me to work on this? But of course, in that case, it's sort of, if I want to spend more time on it, it is going to need to bring in some money. So I'm trying to work out, what does that look like? Is it a passion project? Is it, anyway, sorry, long answer, but any suggestions, any desire to collaborate, any thoughts, all greatly appreciated. Anybody you know who might even like to hear the talk.
Yeah. Thank you, Gilly. I know you've got a second question. Before we do that, I just wanted to ask Steph, what's your biggest challenge in making the film? So just might be able to put you in touch with some expertise on that.
Well, I guess I thought it would be a good idea. So I got some equipment to do things as I went along, but not having done it before, then looking back on it, it really needs to be sort of B-roll footage as opposed to the main thing. So I think kind of the quality of what I've got, it's okay. And also I didn't sort of storyboard anything before I went. So then trying to retrospectively work out how to tell it, I'm not sure. So I think probably needing the funds to revisit projects, to capture some more footage, but then also sort of how to, I think that one of the biggest things is how to tell the stories in an engaging way, in a way that makes people think, oh, I want to do that. Yes, let's set that up in our community, you know, just to spark people, to get them going. So the storytelling and then the actual sort of technicalities of putting together a film. So that's kind of everything, really.
How to do it in an engaging way. I think you've already cracked that, Steph.
Actually, I've put something
yes,
in
Fran. Yeah.
I've put something in chat. We've got somebody in our Letchworth Arts and Leisure Group environment group who works at producing videos for corporate organisations, and I think he might be interested in giving you some advice, or maybe even doing some editing, that sort of thing.
That would be wonderful.
I will ask if he's interested in being put in touch with you.
That would be fabulous. And if so, Kim has my email address, so he can, or and my phone number, so he's welcome to drop me a line. Or
I know your mother through Hitchin Stapler's folk dance group, so I might do that group.
I thought you were going to say through LALG, because that's actually, I gave them this talk the other week.
Yes,
Right.
I wanted to. I was sorry that I was not able to go to that, so I was really pleased when I saw this link to this one, so I could do it online.
Yeah, fab. Thank you for that suggestion, Fran.
Yes, thank you.
So, Gilly, let's have your second question, and then we'll come to Nikki.
Well, I think you've sort of answered it. It was sort of what next for you, because there are lots of different directions you could go in, aren't there? So you've in part answered it. I wondered, what is there anything else, or maybe there's no space for anything else?
Do you know, that is the challenge, isn't it? What next is, and I find myself getting excited by all sorts of different directions, and then trying to narrow down which avenue to take, and also just things like, well, I could go on a course and learn some film editing and things like that, but is that the right direction? It might be interesting, and I enjoy variety, but should I work with somebody who with those skills, and then I can learn some more about the storytelling and weaving that side of it together? So it's,
Yeah.
I'm excited by a number of different areas, working or trying to get myself to focus. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Steph, if only there were a 4-day retreat in May that you could come on, designed to help answer that question.
You
And
see, this is part of my process, indeed.
You're already coming on that, so brilliant. Great, thank you, Gilly. Nikki.
Thank you. Oh, Steph, that was wonderful, and I agree. It is really emotional to watch. It was really moving, and yeah, beautifully done. Really great. Well, my first question, which is its response to what you've just been saying, is if you need someone to come with you on one of these revisits, yes, I'd be happy to support. That sounds like a wonderful thing to do. Yeah. I was wanting to ask you about the projects that you visited on a wider scale. We were talking about the Hitchin Talk talking to each other again and trying to reach more people. Did you find that you were actually seeing that into the community a bit wider in action, or, you know?
I mean, my visits were so flying that I didn't really, you know, I spent a day with them. So most of those were them showing me around the project or something like that, and then learning from them what those projects are doing. Some of them, if I coincided on a day where something was happening, so the Green Meadows one, there was an event happening in the local community. They just happened to have a stall there, so they were sort of getting involved in that sense. And when I went up to Stirling, it was a school holidays, so in this big space upstairs, we were doing natural dyeing, and the kids were having all sorts of fun. And then they had some of the staff outside, and then they had water guns, and they had them on, and they were spraying them with the stuff to make it change colours and things. So they were having a wonderful time doing that. So where it coincided with them doing something, I saw something. But no, do you know, I think that everybody struggled with this, with sort of within the core of keeping things going, how to get people to volunteer to keep that going. And actually something that I think Totnes Renewable Energy Society did well was they've managed to get to a point where then they were large enough, it's taken them 15 years, but they now employ people. And so I think that's the thing, if you want things to have longevity, you've got to have at least an employed person, because volunteers, you end up with the same people, well, you guys will know, doing the offering to the point of burnout, then nobody takes over and things crumble. So I think working towards being able to have somebody whose job it is that can coordinate, that can help things going, seemed to me a direction to move in. But I do think everybody struggles with kind of keeping things going when they are passion-led things to begin with. Yeah, sorry, I don't know if that answers the question well.
No, it's great. The BedZ in London, I mean, that must have started small and it's massive. I'm so impressed with that. Find out more about that. And they must have had enormous communications with the local council and all the local industry to get it built in the first place. So
they've just moved away from that site, actually, because they had their offices in there. They've gone somewhere else now, but I think they're still doing the tours, so I'm sure you could book one, and it was just a free thing. And you can't go into the homes themselves because people live in them. But also what was brilliant was it's not designed, it is an eco village, but it's not designed as it's over here as an eco project. Anybody can live in them. So they've got families, they've got single, they are part of the housing stock. It's not like a separate eco project. And by dint of living in them, you are greener. So regardless of your leanings, they're of course incredibly lucky that where they are in London, they're so close to transport. But they have done things like nobody's allowed to park within, on the streets. It's all around the outside. And the idea with that is that children then come and play in the streets. And they have little bridges that link different bits. So the idea is that when you are going to your house, you will likely bump into a neighbour, and then you have a chat and you have a conversation. So they've thought about that in the process of putting it together, community and environment, and just really cool stuff like the fronts, where they're able to be south facing, have big glass fronts, and it's a little gap and it acts like a greenhouse, and then the vents open them up and the warm air comes in, and the wind cowls that they had on the top, those really strange, help with the air exchange, and it heats them without any need for additional heating. Just, oh, it's so good.
It's as well, doesn't it? It really looks beautiful when you look at that compared to other new developments. It just looks fantastic, exciting and interesting and unusual.
And people go, oh wow, what's that? And there you are, you're in, there's a conversation. That's something that I loved about my walk, was the fact that I had a way into a difficult conversation. You know, I had my backpack, which, oh, you must be doing something big with that, and then there you're into it, and it's finding ways in to a challenging topic. And yeah, BedZ with its interesting architecture is a great way to start those conversations. Yeah, it was cool.
Thank you. We've just got a few minutes left. Any other questions for Steph? Yeah, Nikki.
Sorry, I know it's just been me. Just a little thought. Have you thought about, I'm thinking about education, using this as in an educational way. And what about the Duke of Edinburgh Award schemes? Is it something that could be linked into that in some way through secondary schools? Or my boys never did it, but I don't know how it works, whether it would give inspiration for certain projects or something for youngsters to get involved with.
Do you know, I honestly don't know. I'd have to do a bit more research. Are you thinking that as part of their walking, they would then include project visits like that?
Yeah, or even, you know, just doing that talk at a careers day or something, you know, something that they, oh, I wanted to do some fundraising, I wanted to do some volunteering, you know, to bring people who wouldn't necessarily find those projects, you know, to go and help at, you know, the energy place or whatever.
Yeah. Actually, whilst we do have a moment, I'll gauge your thoughts on what you think about this. It was a conversation I had with somebody before I set off, and then actually we ended up having it at Sheffield again, and I forgot to mention it as in the what next. Somebody had said to me, oh, Steph, I love the idea of doing it, but I wouldn't want to walk. And said, I'd like to do it by public transport. And then we ended up having a conversation about, oh, what if we split this into regions and we got people involved who were interested? We could visit, because of course I only got to visit a handful of projects, and there were and the more you know, the more you oh, have you visited such and such, and I wish I'd written them all down, you know, that people who are local to the area could visit projects. There's a website called carboncopy.eco, so I've asked them, because they have got plotted on the map where all of these projects were, because that's something I thought I should create, and then, you know, it already exists, but to see whether they would be interested in teaming up on something like that, because they could then host the sort of write-up of the site visits. Not people wherever they are in the country could get involved in visiting them, but by public transport. And then we could not only show images and do a little write-up of the site and the project and how to get involved, but also how you can get there. So more people could go and visit, but in a, you know, public transport as opposed to your own car way. I don't know. What do you think?
Love it.
I love it. I love it. Having tried to use, well, it's a few years ago now, but having tried to use buses in Cornwall, that could be quite a challenge. But I think I love the idea. I love the idea.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if people didn't end up necessarily using the public transport option, the people who visit and do the project visit and write up could still share that, and then people could choose to visit alternatively if they wanted, but the option would be out there. But yeah, you're right, public transport in some places is more challenging.
Yeah, thank you.
But it might be an interesting project for local tourist initiatives to build up and link it to accommodation, and people could do it by bike as well. So it could coalesce into a real package for people who are interested in that sort of thing.
And some places offer you free, if not free entry or free something if you travel by bike. I remember we were looking at a nature reserve, and if you cycled, you could go for free. So there might be something there. You see, there's so many things. How do I know what to do?
I can see a spider diagram. Have a big piece of paper and all these ideas firing off.
I
Yeah,
know.
I get it.
Thank you so much for all those questions and your presentation, Steph. I'm going to finish with the challenging question. Kind of zooming out. So I love your passion and your enthusiasm and your inspiration. And there's no doubt that all of these projects make a positive difference and a positive impact. But where are you at now in terms of, you know, what's coming? You still sound to me like we're going to turn all this around.
Oh yeah, well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, for the groups I've been talking to, I think one of the reasons I took on the walk was to try and find a sense of hope for myself as well as for other people, and needing to see positive action. And one of the reasons I found myself focusing on community is because that's where things are happening. I don't see it happening in the high up places where the biggest impacts could be made and that are most needed. Yeah, and there are times where I just look at it and think time is not on our side. But in terms of encouraging people to get involved, and some of the groups I've been speaking to, I'm not necessarily sure that would have engendered action. And so trying to show, well, here are things you can do, and by getting involved and by acting, it makes you feel more hopeful. And it does make, even if it doesn't make a difference in terms of, you know, of course, I mean, I'm not like, I know that there are things that will be set in action that they will be what they will, and it's a case of how bad, not, you know, and that's, but if these things make a positive difference in local communities, and we are going to need strength in local communities, and if people can help, I feel like that's got to be a good thing. And I don't know how I balance. I mean, I have done other talks with a bit more like, I don't know, it's wanting people to be realistic about the state of things, but not so frightened they then think either I'm ignoring this entirely or there's no, I don't know, just wanting to show, okay, yes, it's bad.
Yeah.
But take that information and use it in this project or this project or this, whichever project sparks your interest, channel that into there. Find a positive way of using that fear rather than a debilitating way.
Yes.
That's not to say that I don't have moments where I think, what is the point? Why am I bothering? But when I do get up and talk, I try not to do that. But yes, I have days which are just like, I don't want to be here.
Brilliant answer. Thank you, Steph. I guess it's, you know, as I'm always saying, it's about telling a story with our life that we're proud to tell, no matter what happens. Fantastic. Steph, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. We'll send around the link when it's up on our YouTube channel. Yeah, it's I'm sure it's going to be very popular, even for the people that couldn't make it live here today. So we'll do our best to spread it around as well.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome. And thank you, everybody. If you all unmute yourself and say au revoir and thank you. you, and anything else you want to say?
Thank you. Thank you so
Really-
much. Lovely.
So-
So good to see you.
Yeah. Lots of love, everybody.
Yes. Mwah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.